Welcome to another edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com Deep Dive presented by Dottie's Family Market in Dover, PA. Joining us on the show for a second time is car owner and former driver Don Kreitz Jr. Before we get to Kreitz, Dottie's Family Market in Dover, PA is your one-stop shop on the way to the races. They have fresh-made sandwiches and subs with all the fixins, perfect for a night at the racetrack. Dottie's has everything you need in one location, including a full-service deli, a wide selection of groceries, and gas. If you're looking to dine in, head over to the Hive Coffee House and Cafe for a great sandwich. There is also a seasonal greenhouse on site, and coming soon, Dottie's Crab House, where you can dine in for fresh seafood and all-you-can-eat Maryland crabs. Head over to the corner of Canal and Bull Road in Dover, PA. Dottie's Family Market has you covered. Now here's Kreitz. Donnie, welcome to the Deep Dive. You were on last year. You're one of two guys now who's been on two times. Steve Beitler was the other. So here you go. You're making history today coming on the Deep Dive.
Cool. Thank you. We're glad to be here.
So you and I have talked a couple times, I think, in the last few months or whatever. And I know yesterday we texted back and forth, and I think having you on is really good because we're going to talk about fuel with what happened at Vegas and everything. But I want to talk about some other things as well. But I want to jump in and first off, kind of why this is coming up. What happened at Vegas? Because I know they set it at 65 laps. I was at the meeting. Were you aware that it was going to be 65 laps? I mean, did Christopher tell you that? And then I guess they said it was on 60. I have a friend, and I looked at the tape, and it seemed like it was 53 or 52 when you were running out. Take me through that whole scenario and what made you go with a 28-gallon tank and all that.
So first off, to be able to explain the Vegas thing, I almost have to explain the tank thing.
Go ahead.
Which after that happened, one of my crew guys sent me, because I don't go on social media myself on anything, but had sent me, maybe it was on Twitter, I'm not sure, that David Gravel kind of explained a little bit about the tanks. So the 28-gallon tank holds 28 gallons. You can get 28 gallons in it. The 33-gallon tank only holds 31. So in essence, it's not 5 gallons more, it's 3 gallons more. And then because it's a bigger, wider tank, the bottom of it. So when you're down to a gallon, which normally these cars will start sputtering, 3 gallons, somewhere in that range, sometimes more, just depending on the track configuration. But, we're constantly playing with that pickup, trying to get every single drop out of it. But with the bigger tank, when you get down that low on fuel, it's not, because 2 gallons in a 33-gallon tank is lower than 2 gallons in a 28-gallon tank. So and especially when you go to the corners, it'll wash away from the pickup. So actually the 28 picks up better. So now the 3 gallons difference is really actually down closer to 2. So that's why we run the 28. Normally, historically, we get really good fuel mileage. And I normally can get, if I fill the 28 up and wherever we're running, if someone fills the 33s up, we normally would not run out until the 33s run out, just because we get better fuel mileage. Okay. So that's why we had it on at Vegas. Why more guys are starting to run out, as you've seen, not only Vegas, but like the week before that, I'm watching the March Volusia Outlaw show, and they had the same thing happen. If you remember, on the Monday night, a bunch of guys ran out of fuel, same thing. And then naturally they have to wait till they figure it out, because it all happens within seconds, basically. Once 4, 5, 6 guys run out, okay, then the yellow comes out to let the rest of the field refuel. That's just the way it is. You can't be the first one to run out of fuel. So after that, since it was only the week before, I was sure with Vegas being the opener, High Limit would not want that scenario that just happened with the Outlaws, because it really looks terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Right? So I'm like, well, the 2 gallons now were actually different. I'm not even worried about that. The 65 laps they announced at the drivers' meeting, and again, everyone's learning. This changes all the time, and everyone, including all the officials of all the tracks in the country and series and everything else, it's kind of a moving target, and everyone learns as stuff like this keeps happening, that these engines now are taking more fuel. So like in the 90s already, when the Outlaws would come in, Williams Grove, for a Williams Grove local show, was doing 50 laps green and yellows. When the Outlaws were coming in, they used to do 50, but then they bumped it up to 55. Right. So in the 90s, let's just say the 55. We won't even say the 50. The tanks were the same. They were 28 gallons. So in the 90s, we're making 150 to 200 less horsepower than we are now. The laps were 55. Now someone thinks we can go 65 laps on, not, it's not a quarter-mile track. It's a bigger track. I don't know if they consider Vegas a full half mile or not, but it's a wide open joint. It races like a half mile, and you would use fuel like a half mile.
And the air was really good that night, if I'm not mistaken.
So because it's Vegas and the sea level where it's at, since it's higher, it wasn't good like how Volusia could get good, or how Port Royal was 2 weeks ago, but it was okay. It was medium air, I'm going to say. Okay. But with them redoing the track before the feature, and I don't care that they redid the track. I don't really care what rules there are or anything. We will adapt to them, and that's my job, to adapt to whatever the rules are. But I'm just saying, they redid the track. New for this year now was the 1.5 inch wicker bill. That means more on throttle time is what you're gonna use more fuel just by adding that 1.5 inch wicker bill, which most of the guys would have had on in the feature. Mm-hmm. So we had a track redo. We had that. The car that's leading the race, our lap times were really, really good. It's hard to be that much faster than the field, but the penalty is, even though we normally get excellent fuel mileage, if you're going faster, you're going to use more fuel. That's just, Daryn we had a lot of on throttle time. It wasn't much, feather in the gas or whatever. So we were going to use the most amount of fuel. That's probably why we were I don't think we were the first, but, one of the first 2 or 3, let's just say, to run out of fuel. So we started running out at 22. If I have a 33-gallon tank on, the 2, I'll even give them the 3 gallons more, but I know it wouldn't have picked up that much. But I'm going to go somewhere between 2 and 6 laps, let's just call it, right? Which you have to get to 30 laps or the 65 green yellow. So we wouldn't have made it, no how, with the tanks and immaterial issue, whether we had the 33 on or whether we had the 28 on, we would have never made it to the 30 lap. And I honestly would like to know, because I don't know what every field in the car had left for fuel. I would like to know how many cars would have made it. My guess is between 1 and 5. I don't know. Because the yellow wasn't really for a fuel stop. It was for cars stopping on the track.
Right.
Then after they made one caution lap, then they said, okay, we're now at our number or over our number or whatever. Now it is a fuel stop. But originally, if guys don't, just say they pull in to the infield and they don't stop on the track, who's ever left has to make it to the 30 laps if there's not another yellow. So they knew at the previous yellow that was whatever laps before. I don't even remember. It was
lap 17, I believe they had a caution which
Okay.
Rico got up to, I think, second or third, and he started to run out on that restart.
Yes. And it's just, again, it's track design. It's everyone's fuel system is different. And there's different engine builders. Some guys use what their engine builder requests them to run. Some guys use their own fuel system. But just there's so many variables here that I don't think it's possible for a track or a series official to really determine that lap count accurately. They are trying to determine it down to your last gallon of fuel, down to their last lap number, I'm going to say. You need to have a 5-gallon buffer in there for circumstances, whether it's Mike Hess or whoever. He can't factor everything in. Our motor, just say that we had in that tonight compared to a Morrison or a Garrett. Normally, like I said, we would use less fuel, but between all the different motors that are out there, you got 2 to 3 gallons difference, I'm going to say, in different engine builders and fuel systems. So now when you throw a driver in there between different driving styles, you're going to have another 2 to 3 gallons difference. That's not factoring in the air. That's not factoring in track conditions. You need at least a 5-gallon buffer. They're trying to do this right down to the last lap, and they don't need to be that exact. To me, no one likes fuel stops. The teams don't like fuel stops. Not only the fans don't like them, the teams don't like them, the tracks don't like them. No one likes fuel stops. But I don't think it was a good look for sprint car racing what the Outlaws did at Volusia, and then the next week come back and High Limit does the exact same thing at Vegas. I can tell you we had, and this was through C-Bell, we had possible corporate sponsorship there. And now these are racing people, but they're not sprint car racing people.
Right.
And they were there to meet us, to meet the team and for possible future sponsorship. And the guy that was in charge, we had just texted a few times, but I had never met him personally. And so after the race on the way home, he had texted me, a whole thing and said, sorry for what happened. You guys were robbed. Glad meeting you guys. You are a very professional team. And he went on to give us compliments, and he just said, I think we'll do something in the future. We really like your team. We don't care for that series now, as far as for us sponsoring you if in one of those series races. That was very non-professional. We think you got robbed. And as a corporate sponsorship, we didn't really need to be a part of that. And they weren't on our car, but they were there for this. And there's so much more implications when stuff like this happens than what any of the officials realize. Now, I had told Mike Hess that this was going to happen, that we were going to have someone there, and that if this came through, they were going to sponsor some races for C-Bell, high limit races that we would have went to only because a lot of their races aligned better with C-Bell's schedule.
Sure.
And we're at NASCAR when NASCAR was in the area. So it wasn't that we were picking high limit over Outlaws or anything like that. We like both series. I loved it when Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet started this. I thought it was great for sprint car racing. I still think it is. It's unfortunate that it happened like that, but I hope something gets addressed in the future. I think the show would have been better and less drama. And I don't know what that number needs to be. Apparently on that night, it needed to be like 50 laps. And I think I did not watch the live, but I watched a replay of race after that in California. And I think Chase Rodman announced it was a lot smaller track than Vegas, and they were doing 50 laps. So hopefully the point got across. Unfortunately, it cost us 25,000 and possible sponsorship. Uh, but I think all the tracks need to adjust. I'm always here, not that I know everything, but if anyone ever has a question on anything, I'm usually up to date on what's available, how many, is this size tank available, or the prices on everything, how much fuel we're using. I would say at the very least now, and I never thought of it this way, but if you're going to try and monitor how much fuel someone's using, you need to do it off the fastest car. You can't take like an average now of the field, because then the fastest car is going to use 2 to 3 more gallons than the average. So that's not really fair, not unless you want to have a fuel mileage race. And I don't think sprint car racing should be a fuel mileage race. So I just think it's something that needs to be addressed. And hopefully they did already compensate for it. I don't know if all the tracks will or did, but I'm willing to, talk to anyone that's interested.
So with everything you said, you said it's different now. When did this start to change? And what is the biggest difference that these cars are burning more fuel? Is there something that they're putting in the motors now as opposed to years ago? What is the biggest change that these things are sucking fuel as much as they are?
Horsepower. It just, the more horsepower you make, the more motor you have. A sprint car engine uses more fuel than a midget engine, let's just say. So if we're making 150, 200 horsepower more than we were in the 90s, you have to put more fuel in it or it's going to burn down. And I can attest to that. We burnt some motors down. Like we weren't putting enough fuel in. Now, I will say Vegas, because we had burnt down at Volusia in February, and the Vegas was the next race for us. And especially when Davey's not there, he normally would do the fuel systems. I was really gun shy on running the car even close to lean. So I was running it extra rich at Vegas. But it just basically comes down to horsepower. The more horsepower you make, you have to feed it fuel. It did not, honestly, we did not see a difference until last year. And at first we thought maybe it was Logan Wagner, because he's on the hammer.
Yeah, he's on the
throttle. Especially at port, up top most of the time where you're going to use more fuel. But then when Daryn came in, and like the Outlaw shows at the Grove, like we were even using more fuel with him. He's going to use normally less fuel than Logan Wagner, let's just say. But we were still, like last year, we were starting races with more fuel than we ever had before. And it's just, and it's worse now. And I know obviously we're running okay this year. So our motors are making power.
Yes.
They're taking more fuel. And we're not even on top of probably giving it enough fuel yet. We were super, super safe last week at port just because we didn't want to burn another motor down. But, this is just an evolving thing. And it's unfortunate. I don't even know if at some point it's not going to come to, like, it's going to get close on a fast half mile to running green to checker without any yellow laps. It's getting to where we're using that much fuel. So I don't even know what the lap count should be. I don't even know. I'm going to say if we need to have 30 lap races on a big half mile. I know they generally were, at least on the big night, but they should probably almost be 25 just to kind of guard against of having to have a fuel stop for that last 5 laps. Smaller tracks, yes, you can run more laps, but we are very fastly approaching that it's going to soon be hard to run these 30 lap races, no matter what fuel tank you have on.
I know the Grove's 55 laps still. I actually checked in the last couple of weeks. And, I think they burned so many laps at the beginning. Just is that necessary? I know I hear fans say this all the time. Just so many laps lining up. Then you get the four wide. I've had enough of the four wide. But
Yeah.
well, it's just, I mean, everybody does it. So it's kind of like not
Yes.
special anymore. But um, is one of the big problems not the number of cautions most nights, but just so many laps before you even line up?
They are normally good. I mean, obviously, at the Grove, they line up on the backstretch near
Yep.
the bridge before, and that's why they started doing that, just to cut the laps down, before they even push anyone off. Yes, there's still probably, and I don't count them. I don't know. You would know better than me. What, 5 to 7 laps, you think? Most
Yeah.
races at any track before they drop the green,
Yeah.
really? And that's okay. That's doable. But then it's going to be, like I said,
Right.
we're not going to be able to stand hardly any yellows then. And, normally this does not happen as much in a World of Outlaws / high limit show. Historically, those races, because the whole field is actually all really good cars. So
Yeah.
now, historically, you have very few yellows. Either they go straight through or there's possibly one or two yellows. Normally, it's a non-issue. It is, yes. Now the field's split up. If High Limit and the Outlaws are both running on the same night, so the field isn't quite as good, So, yes, does seem like we're lending or towards more yellows now than we normally would have in these bigger races, I'm going to say, or in the top tier classes. The local shows, you would generally normally have more yellows than, a big outlaw show or something. So I don't know. All this does need to be factored in, though.
I think the work area too. I'm not a fan of the work area. I've never been a fan of the work area. I've made that quite clear. And look, when did the work area come into existence? Because that has also sucked laps. I don't care what anyone says, it sucks laps.
I agree, and you're right. They want to cut something out. They want a chance to trying to reduce laps. I agree 100%. That is lengthens the show out so much. They should look. It's the same for everyone. It's the same for us. If we crash, if we get a flat tire, that it is for Kyle Larson, for Brad Sweet, for David Gravel. It doesn't matter as long as it's the same and they're consistent with no matter who it is. I would think at the Vegas show, I doubt if we were the 49. Now, they still might not. I'm not going to say they would have threw the yellow if we were the 49. I'm going to say they definitely wouldn't have put us to the back. That was a whole nother issue on top of the, extra laps they were running. But it's just be consistent no matter who it is. That's all you can ask for. And unfortunately, yeah, this is a moving number. It's constantly evolving.
Dude, the powers that be in this sport, and even like I've often said, a governing body. I've always wanted a governing body to oversee the whole sport, and then each area has, region bodies under them, and then you can kind of go to those. I think this would fall under something like that. People need to, the powers that be, so to speak, need to get together and realize this is changing, and it's costing people races, and also it's not looking good. It doesn't present the product well. Is that something that needs to happen? High Limit, Outlaws, All Stars, Pennsylvania, everybody kind of get together on this thing and say, look, we need to take like 2 weeks and take samples or whatever and realize that this is changing.
That's a good idea. I don't know that it will or won't happen. It is a good idea. It would be good if it was standardized at one time, and I don't remember everything, so I could be wrong, but if my memory serves me right, at one time the Outlaws had a lap count for half-mile tracks and then another lap count for all the tracks, just say under a half mile. And it needs to be like that. Like you said at the Vegas race, they mentioned it at the drivers' meeting. So if they say, okay, we're going to do 65 laps at the driver's meeting, after the driver's meeting is heating the motor normally. That's too late to know that.
Yeah.
And by the way, a 28 and a 33-gallon tank do not interchange with mounts. It's a wider tank. You have to change. You got to work a little bit to get 33s on these cars. It's not like it's just a quickie thing that you're going to do in 5 minutes. So, and probably because we're not set up on it. I mean, I have a 33-gallon tank. We've had one since 2013 for the National Open because it's 40 laps. Mm-hmm. We've used it twice since 2013 because normally the National Open's in the fall, the air's good. No one can make it 40 laps. And especially now, I can guarantee you no one's going to make it 40 laps straight through. They're going to have a fuel stop. So, if you have a fuel stop, yeah, you can make it with a 28. So we only used that tank twice since 2013. I do have one. I didn't take it along. I honestly wasn't that worried about it. I am now, but we need to know all this stuff ahead of time, not at the driver's meeting. And the only way they can really do that easily is just to give that number. And I don't even care if High Limit and the Outlaws are different, because maybe they would be. I don't know. But if it's a half-mile track, just say all half-mile tracks are 45 laps or whatever they think is safe, bundling them all together. And all tracks under a half mile are 60 laps or whatever. Everyone knows. I know 2 months from now, if we're going to a race, this is the lap count. We don't have to wait till we get there. We don't have to try and get a hold of Mike Hess. We don't, we do need to have an easier way.
Well, I think too, the other thing is now I see, like, let's face it, you're registering for high limit races early. Now the Outlaws are doing the same thing. I'm on their text string. So I know like 3 or 4 days in advance, they say if you're going to race this weekend, so on and so forth, they could probably give the lap count when you register.
Absolutely. That's a very good idea. And I don't think high limit, not unless it's changed, I don't think they have that same texting thing yet with everyone. Right. I do also get the Outlaw things, and I saw that. And honestly, yes, that's a great idea. They know about how many cars are going to show up roughly, and that was a very good idea they started. And you're right. I think they should say, okay, the track this weekend, you have to register. By the way, you need mufflers. The lap count's 50 laps. Blah, 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 whatever else would be. There's going to be a fuel truck there, or there isn't a fuel truck, whatever else they need to say.
So everything that happened, I mean, obviously you had control of that race. You were going to win that race. Nobody was catching you. Not that night. Will you run high limit races again? I mean, are you soured enough that you don't go, or maybe you're more selective about where you go? How do you you're an owner. I know you guys aren't the richest team in the world. And how do you kind of juggle that in your mind with what happened at Vegas? Do you kind of say, well, look, I saw something the following week. They did a good job with it. Maybe they made changes. Or do you say, look, I got to be more selective with where I go?
I am not boycotting high limit. I try and do whatever I think is best for sprint car racing. I love sprint car racing. Anything we can do. Kyle Larson has brought a lot more attention to sprint car racing. Just him being in it over the last 10 years or however long it's been since he's been in NASCAR. And the same for when Christopher Bell, I mean, I've just had so many people contact me, about him being in the car, people that I don't know. And it just brings more fans in. That's better for everyone. That's better for the tracks. Even if they're just watching, on Flow or Dirt Vision or whatever, and they're going to eventually show up at the track too. But, any time, there is nothing like sprint car racing. So all you got to do is get the person there. I mean, I had told you about the executive we had there. Bell was with him. He said the guy was going nuts doing the feature. He loved it, and because it's just so much different and exciting in real life. Really, when it's on Dirt Vision or Flow, they both do a very good job covering it, but it's not like being there. It's not like being there, seeing the speed, hearing the motors.
Yep.
It is different, and everyone's learning. Look, I benefit from. I don't like some of the rules they do because some of them are more geared towards their traveling teams that have a lot of money behind them. I always like rules to where let's make it easier for a 305 or a 360 guy to move up, buy one 410 motor, dip his toe in it here. Let's not keep making rules that cost money. That bleeder air up thing is not, we don't need that. That I know why they're doing it. They're saying, yeah, it'll eliminate some flat tires. It'll make the show move quicker. We don't need it. We don't need cockpit adjusters. We've run how long now without them? It's not going to make it any better. And honestly, that wicker bill thing, you can't go back in time. This is what history, at least over my life of being in sprint car racing for 40 years. Once we went without a wicker bill, now everyone gets their car hooked up without a wicker bill. So now once you add one, after everyone already has their car hooked up more, now the only way you have passing is if someone can go in another lane wherever their preferred lane is not. So before, just say without a wicker bill, only 5 guys could stick in the middle of the track or on the bottom of the track or whatever if a guy's running the cushion. But now with the wicker bill, maybe 20 guys can stick in that preferred groove. If 20 cars are there and you can't get around them and you're behind them, you're going to run 21st. It's too hard to pass. Right. If everyone's on the throttle all the time, you're not going to pass them. You need off throttle time. Obviously, that's why heat races are so hard to pass in. You need off throttle time to be able to pass a car. If there isn't off throttle time, you're not going to pass someone. It's just, it's impossible. So we need more off throttle time, not less. I personally would have made a rule maybe for like qualifying, because these motors are approaching $100,000.
Yeah.
It's hard for guys to get into the sport. We can't have it that you have to be a multimillionaire to run a 410 sprint car. That is not a good longevity plan. I think for qualifying, so that you don't need a 950 horsepower engine, we could qualify when you're out there by yourself very easily without a wicker bill on. I don't know what is going to slow the cars up. 0.3 of a second, a half a second, guys will end up getting, it'll slow them up initially and then everyone will get, and I'm really honestly, and I'm talking on a half-mile track. I think you could go all non-wicker, maybe even up to the feature. Then on the feature, go back, let guys put a 1-inch wicker bill on. That is so much cheaper to run than the more wicker bill you have. It's harder on the motor. You got to go less races on the motor. You need more motor. It's harder on the rear. It's harder on the drive line. It's harder on everything. It's so much more expensive to run. Every time you add hookup to these cars, we need to take hookup away, not adding it. I know they thought, Brad or whoever initially came up with it, they thought, okay, this is going to mean if we have 1.5 inch wicker, we can now run in this other lane. It'll make easier passing. But it doesn't work like that. It's never worked like that over the years. That's why we went from super grippy tires. Each stage when we went to tires, we went to harder ones, then we went to ones with less grip. And that's because when we had really grippy tires, everyone sat in a line and the tracks were either too wet or then they'd rubber down immediately because everyone's in the same lane. Right. That's what going back to 1.5 inch wicker will do. Last year, I thought, and you would know this better than me, but I try and watch all the races when we're not racing. There was so many last lap passes last year. And now I would normally be watching. No, I don't catch every race at Huset's or, at every track, but I'm going to catch all the high limit races and all the outlaw races. And there were so many last lap passes and 3 guys going for the lead. I did not see the need to change the rule. I don't see what the gain's going to be. I just think we need to look at stuff to try and keep the sport as cheap as possible. The economy's not good right now. I'm glad, the people are in there that are in there now running the country, but that's not going to be a turnaround in 1 month. It's going to take a year or whatever to take effect if it happens that quick. And I can already see it in our parts store. There's going to be less guys racing this year. The Saturday night racer is really going to be pinching his pennies. Everyone wants to race. The guy might run till he has to do a rebuild on the engine, or, till he gets in a bad crash or whatever. When it comes summertime, we are going to be hurting for cars. I can absolutely guarantee you. Guys are going to be picking their shows. We gotta, I don't have the answers to everything, but we don't need to be making rules that makes it more expensive to race.
No, I would agree with that. And one of the things I was looking at the other day, I was talking to somebody who was on the Outlaws tour for a while. He was a tire guy, and we were just talking about the racing, and he felt if they wanted to do something, give guys choices on tires, not manufacturers. But he was saying when he was with the Outlaws, they had 3 different compounds you could choose from, and what he was saying was you got to have comers and goers. Like, yes, guys, one guy would choose a softer one and hope, hey, there were no cautions. And then another guy would take a harder one, betting on, hey, the track's going to, slick over. And then you had a middle ground there. And he said, if you give guys 3 options, like I guess the late models do this.
Okay.
And you're going to have guys making different choices, and you're going to have comers and goers. He said, you're not really increasing the price because they already have those compounds and stuff from years ago. And he said, you don't have to get Goodyear, American Racer, which they're not coming back.
No,
they're not. People want them to come back. They're not coming back.
No.
But just having the different compounds, you'd have people making different selections. They wouldn't all be the same. And you have movers, guys coming and going. Do you kind of agree with that?
I do, but it's another thing that's going to cost money, because now guys use different offset wheels. Now you need so many more wheels, so many more tires mounted. I went through all that when we had, open tires. I've won a lot of races when I was driving by picking the right tire in the 80s and the 90s before we had tire rules. And I like that. But again, I don't know that we can go back to that. I do like when we do have a tire that's soft enough that it does not give anyone an edge of softening the tire. If you make the tire too hard, now you open that up to them guys of doing that. And I'm not saying anyone's doing it nowadays, but the possibility's definitely there. I do like that you qualify on a tire and then you have to run that tire in the feature. That kind of helps that rule of the tire being harder if someone still wants to soften the tire and take a chance on it in the feature. I'm not that familiar with that stuff. I'm sure it's elevated to now to where, okay, maybe it'll wear off in 5 laps or whatever, or 10 laps, and then it'll be back to the regular tire. So they can qualify on it being softer, but then it wears off in the feature, and it doesn't hurt them. I don't know any of that stuff. I don't have time to mess with it. Honestly, is the main reason.
So I want to shift gears a little bit to your team, because all of a sudden you're a traveling team. I don't know what happened here. You snookered everybody. Now you're going to Texas, you're going to Volusia, you're going to Vegas. We'll get into the performance thing in a minute, but what has changed with this team that now you're kind of getting out of central Pennsylvania a little bit? Is this something you just wanted to do? Is it because of the drivers you have the opportunity to have? What has led to this deal where now you're going these other places?
So last year, the reason it started, and it started with Knoxville, we wanted to do Knoxville. Daryn liked Knoxville. He's good there. He asked, could we do it? So we said, yeah, let's make it happen. We got to go there once before, so we go there in June for the Outlaws show, and then naturally we go out there for the Nationals. The Texas thing last year, so after the National Open, was a little bit of a bummer because the wreck with Daryn and stuff. And I knew he felt bad, and he was close to Texas. And one of my silent sponsors said, is there any race, racing after the National Open here? There were still some races, but not really any good ones, let's just say. And one of my sponsors said, is there races anywhere? Is there a race we can go to or something, go run with these guys? And me and Cassidy was all over it and looking up, so, we came up with this Texas thing. It was close for Daryn, where he lived, and he had run there before. So that's why we went there at the end of last year. This year, we had over the winter, when High Limit announced the Vegas race, my wife and I were married in Vegas. And, many moons ago. And we used, before Cassidy was born, we'd go to Vegas like 3 times a year or something, and we haven't been there for 20 years. But my wife said, hey, it would be cool, if we could go run at Vegas. And honestly, I didn't care what series was there, but it was just a thing to do, a bucket list thing. I had a sponsor that was all in for it, says, look, I'll get the car there and this and that. So it wasn't really going to cost us extra money, more than it cost to go to Williams Grove, let's just say. So that's how that came about. So when C. Bell came into the picture, so I was set up with Daryn to do Vegas. When C. Bell got approved to run and he came into the picture, well, Vegas was, the NASCAR guys were there. Yeah. So he was going to run Thursday and Saturday. And he was approved to do that. So C. Bell says to me, he said, hey, it's been a minute since I've been in a sprint car. Can we go to Volusia? And I'm like, I don't really want to go to Volusia. It's normally a motor killer in February. So as it kept getting closer and we're watching the 3, I said, look, we'll do this. Normally they have a practice night. We'll go to the practice night. If everything looks okay, not with him driving the car, but just with the air's not super good. I don't think we're going to hurt a motor or whatever. Let's run. We'll run the first night, but I'm going home. We're not going to ruin everything we have for the year at Volusia. He said, okay, that's fine. So we're watching the 360 thing the week before, and C. Bell's texting me, are you watching this? I said, yeah. That looks like a pretty good track for the 69K. It was kind of getting slicker every night. Wasn't locked down like Volusia can be. So I said to C. Bell, look, do you want to run? We can just stay there and take it night by night if you want to, since it looks like it could be a good track for us. And by then, the week before, we knew the weather was going to be around in the 80s, not normally how it is, 40 degrees at night there. So that's why Volusia, that wasn't on our schedule. Vegas was. So, and Texas wasn't on our schedule. So we were committing to Volusia and Vegas. So then C. Bell would like to run, some races that when he's going to be in the area at certain things. So we had been talking back and forth. And I told him, look, we're doing this Volusia and Vegas thing. We'll have to see how things can go. Like you said, we're not the team that has the most money. If I didn't have someone that wanted to, at least get us there, I told him we can do all the shows we can do that are close to home or semi-close, but those really far traveling shows, we're not going to be able to do that without backing. And Seabell was in the car because of his ability, not because he said, hey, I can bring this or that,
Right.
or that was a requirement to be in the car or anything like that. That had nothing to do with it. This was after the fact. I just told him, unfortunately, this is the way it is. He knows how our operation is, and he was well aware. And he said, I know things are very tight with you, but at the same time, we do have everything we need to win races. I don't want people to think that our car's not capable or whatever. If someone drops 100,000 here, I can't make the one car that we're running that night on the track any better than what it is. That car is as good as I can make it when we go out. We just don't have 10 of everything like other guys do. That's the difference. So anyway, he worked this thing out, and these corporate people were there, and I think the Texas thing's going to happen, and it is a high limit show. I have not gotten confirmation on that yet. It is not a done deal, a signed deal yet. We will announce something if it is, but really the only thing we have, I'm going to say, that would be in concrete right now, if it goes through, is Texas. We have no other traveling shows that we're locked into. Seabell would like to run first couple nights of Speed Week. NASCAR's off, and he doesn't have any. He has a lot of commitments besides when there's NASCAR races, sponsor appearances, a lot of stuff going on during the week. So he can't always just run every midweek show that he wants to run. It's just not possible. So we have to find these races for him to run. And during NASCAR season, it is going to be on the weekend. They asked him, every race has to be approved, but they would appreciate it if he wouldn't run the night before a Cup race. So that's why he wasn't then. That's why he was off for not running Vegas on Saturday. Originally he was, but then, I asked Daryn, and I felt sorry. Daryn's not a substitute driver. He is not sitting. He should not be sitting on the bench. I felt bad even asking Daryn, and Daryn did it just as a favor. And he knew how it would look. It was very awkward for him to do that. And he just totally amazed me how he could jump in the car, not running all year. And I don't care how the car was set up or how good or bad it was. He still went out there and warm ups, right off the bat, and turned good laps and turned a good time trial lap. And he just absolutely really blew me away at Vegas. How good of a driver he still is. He does not miss his marks. I mean, he hit that wide open in 3 and 4, the bottom of Vegas, every lap. People don't realize, if you go in there and you're 6 inches to a foot out, the car does not look as good as what it looks when you hit your marks perfectly. So we don't know what's on the horizon. We do have a couple things planned for Seabell, more, closer to home. And as far as the away shows, we're just going to have to wait and see.
So from a performance standpoint, you win at Volusia. That had to be a thrill, not only just from you. I mean, you won at Volusia, and you beat the Outlaws, and you beat some high limit guys. You had Christopher Bell in the car. I don't think you could have scripted it any better. Then you go to Vegas. You should have won Vegas. That would have been another national touring event. Both of them are away from home. And then you come back here last week at Port Royal, and you boat race the field with Ryan Smith. And I know you said we're running okay now. Okay. I would say you're one of the best cars in the country. I see a lot of guys, and you're one of the best cars in the country. To have 3 guys who, let's say Daryn wins 3 different guys, 2 national touring races, and then come back here with Ryan Smith, who it's only his second time in the car. He hasn't been in it for 12 years or however long.
Yeah.
To get a win like that, I know that was a satisfying win for you to get Ryan Smith a win, but just this team and how well they perform every time out. I'd say it's almost as good as it ever was, if not better.
Things have been going well. I hate to say, and I guess I'm always the negative Nelly, but you know, the tracks we've been at were picked to go to because I thought they were good 69K tracks. We're not going to Hobstadt and winning or Jacksonville, Illinois, even though Seatbelt wants to go to those tracks.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
I actually told him last week, where was it? Oh, wherever the Outlaws were running Friday night, Lawton or something. I texted him, this is not a 69K track, right? And he texted me back, every track's a 69K track. We can go, anywhere and win, but, I picked 69K tracks, it's, and that's no guarantees. And I'm telling you, Volusia, we weren't perfect. Clearly, Larson was the better car than us pretty near every night. Within a few more, Bell just did an incredible job blocking, whatever you want to say to Larson on the night we won. The next night, we were going to have a chance in lap traffic. We were the better long run car. Larson was a better short run car, but we did not. I'm very happy with our performance and how our car was at Volusia. It was never right, though. I talked to Davey the day of the last night on Saturday, and he said, "You guys are doing so good. I can't believe how fast you are." But then he says, the 57's in another league from you guys. So, so, and down there, they were the fastest car. They really were. So, we were good at Texas. Daryn did draw up front for the dash. You got to figure, are we going to run the same if we start in the fourth row or that? Probably not. And no one is, it's just the way it is. But it did end up being a good track for us. Texas last year ended up being a good track for us. Port opening day was a really, really good track for us. We had better win that show, right? And by the way, the drivers we had were perfect for the tracks when they ran the car. Daryn's really good at Texas. Vegas was similar to that. He ran down and passed shots the last time the Outlaws were there. Daryn's good at Vegas. C-Bell loves Volusia. He's a really good, perfect driver for Volusia. Ryan Smith is a good, smooth driver, knows how our stuff operates, drove a perfect race. Those were perfect conditions for us, though, and him. We're kind of buffaloing people right now. I only take into it. I'm very happy with what has happened so far. It does not mean that we're there. They've all been good tracks for us. We should have run good at all those shows.
So Davey's not in Vegas. I don't, he wasn't at Volusia.
No.
When he's not at the track, is he in communication with you guys? Do you talk? Is he helping out from home? Or even when he's not at the track here, how does that dynamic work with you guys?
Davey is so into it, but because, you have to get on some type of an iPad computer, something, on your TV, and he can't do that. He has to go to his daughter's house. So he tells me before Volusia, right? I bought my daughter a brand new big screen TV so I could see the car better, right? This is how much Davey's into it. Davey lives for racing. And yes, he offers me, way too busy during the night, not unless it's an emergency. I do not call Davey during the night. Every now and then his daughter will text Cassidy and say, "Hey, Dad said this about the car," or whatever we're sitting here watching. But normally I won't. And at Volusia, I think the only day I did call him was the last night before that. And I'm really mad that I screwed that last night up with that motor thing, because the changes I made to the car for the last night, I really pounded my head on that, and I thought I was going to come up with something, but we'll never know that. But no, Davey is there if I need him. I really haven't, from Vegas to when we got there, I let him know what the air was, just because we had burnt motors down and I was really nervous about it. So he said, "No, you should be super safe. We're fine." I did not, we talked setups before we went, but after we're there, there's too much going on. They run these shows through so quick. And without Davey there, now I'm doing the stuff I normally do and the stuff that he does. I just really don't have time, but Davey is into it. I probably don't use him enough when we're away. I am so nervous and scared to death until we run warm-ups. After the car runs a lap, and if we're at least semi in the ballpark, I can relax then and feel okay. And we have been doing that. But, if we unload and we're out to lunch at tracks we're not at, I'm going to be in serious trouble and I'll be a total wreck.
I know you're nervous in the pit area. I see it. It's nervous energy. But what you seem like you're having more fun now. Is that the case? Your team, I talked to obviously Calvin Knapp. You guys just seem like you're having such a good time now at this point in this journey that you're taking as an owner.
It's naturally fun when you're running good. It's not fun when it costs you money and you're not running good. No one likes that. No one gets along as good as they do when you're running good and winning. It is fun because, especially just like it's fun for Davey now, when you're closer to your last race, and that's how it is for us as owning a team and everything. As costs keep escalating, I'm so lucky to have people that are backing us enough that we can still keep running for now. But the day's going to come when we can't. I really am working hard, and the whole team is, to try and take advantage of the C-Bell being in the car. Daryn, before he retires or someone else rings him, and I do know he wanted to run Knoxville this year, and I couldn't make that happen. So I do know he is going to be running, another car there. And, but, he did want to run our car, and I couldn't make it happen for him. But while we still have Daryn and now, Ryan, I'm excited about running locally with him. So we are very upbeat. We are having fun. It is a exciting time for our team. And I just hope it keeps going.
Is Daryn going to be in the car for all the World of Outlaws events at the Grove?
He is. Right now, that's what he's, let's just say, locked in for at this point. I told him if he sees anything else, we were originally, so the One Silent sponsor has family in the state of Washington. We were going to go out there to Skagit because he wanted to go, and he was, going to get the car and stuff out there for us. And that was around in June, around maybe when the Huset's big race is. I think it was
the Dirt
same
Cup.
week. It was paying 60-some thousand to win. So we were kicking around, and Daryn said he would love to go out there and drive the car. And this was before the C-Bell thing came up. But once, naturally, it costs money to go to Volusia and go to Vegas. We had to bow out of, towing that car all the way to the West Coast. So we're probably not going to do that. C-Bell likes Eldora. I don't know if he's going to be able to run it. I mean, if he can, I know he could only run the shows during the week and not the final show. Sure. So that kind of rules Knoxville out, so I don't know what's on the horizon. There's a lot of possibilities, probably more at home than away from home, but hopefully something happens that we can still, run some of the away shows.
Well, whatever you do, people like when your car shows up. That's for sure. And right now, getting a lot of, I'd say a lot of chatter about your team, maybe even more than ever. And I think it's because of the drivers. I think obviously it's the way you guys are performing. What's it like working with Christopher Bell?
It is like, and this is not a knock or a negative on him, he is so happy to be back at the sprint car races. He is like a little kid. Except for the point of naturally his driving ability. You can just tell, and not that Daryn's not a professional or Ryan Smith isn't a professional, but that he's so used to dealing with the cup car and everything that you have to do. He is just beyond professional. Everything is yes, sir, no, sir, and he is just, it's hard to wipe the smile off his face. I know he wishes he could run 60 races this year instead of just a couple that we're probably going to end up running. But I think he's having a ball. He's really showing it. We text back and forth all the time, especially whenever there's racing on, or he's like, boy, I wish we were there at this track or whatever, so it's really going good. I guess apparently maybe there's some way with all these drivers. I know Daryn, I learned some stuff from him last year at Knoxville because we hadn't been any good at Knoxville before. And Daryn helped me out there with a car. And I think having all these different drivers, it gives you a perspective, and it's probably part of why we're having a little bit more success. It's hard not to learn something from a driver that's in the car, especially since I drove already. It's really easy to have a good rapport with the drivers more. I still don't see how, a Davey Brown or a Ricky Warner, how they can possibly be as good as they are without ever driving a car. For me, I would be terrible if I would have never drove the car. It's easier. It's not easy, but it's easier because I know if we change this bar, this is how the car is going to feel. I basically don't even have to ask the driver. I know this is what it's going to do. So that makes it a lot easier, but everyone is having fun, and we hope it continues.
Well, Donnie, I appreciate you reaching out and being able to get you on the show again. Obviously, I don't want to keep you all day. I could. It'd be great. I mean, you have a lot of insight. But again, I appreciate you being on the deep dive again and reaching out, and we were able to get it done today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I did reach out just so the fans and everyone knows to Jeremy, because he's the guy when you want to get news out there, and he has the program for that. And I just wanted to I'm not smarter than anyone else. I don't want to say I want to educate everyone, but really the fans, all the track officials at tracks across the country, to let them know that something is changing in this. So thanks again for having me on, and I really appreciate it.
Look, if you can get officials and promoters and everybody of the like to start thinking differently, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Kind of, makes the sport better. So
yes.
I think that's a positive. Donnie, again, thank you very much. Hopefully, when's the next race?
Cassidy is running Saturday at Port, which I'm sad to say. I don't know if there's going to be any racing this weekend. I hate to even throw that out there to the fans, but the weather does look absolutely terrible. And then the following week, with all the racing around, we only have one car together. So I'm now on our off week, kind of trying to get a second car together that we want to get out with Ryan next week. And we'll probably just look at the weather to see if we just do Port, or if we do the Grove and Port, or if we just do the Grove with him. I don't know. I didn't even talk to him about it yet. And I'm only just starting on the car at night, so I don't know if it's going to be done or not, but I would think we're going to at least be at Port on Saturday, the following Saturday.
Don't ask Cassidy. Seems like she's costing you money by going to all these races. She wants to go everywhere, it seems like.
She does, and it's amazing because at the same time she wants to run, and if we go away, she definitely don't get to run. But yes, she's having a ball too, and everyone's having a lot of fun, and it's really cool right now at this time for us.
Well, Donnie, again, thank you very much, and we look forward to possibly seeing you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks
right.
Again.
Take care.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to wrap up another edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com Deep Dive presented by Dottie's Family Market in Dover, PA. A lot of good stuff from Don Kreitz Jr. there, a little different than the last time we had him on. And also, if you like the content on our YouTube channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also check out our daily exclusive content at SprintCarUnlimited.com. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Deep Dive.